Time for business news now here on the programme. As promised, we are taking you live all this week, in fact, to the snowy Swiss Alps. Of course, it's the World Economic Forum that's taking place there. Among the 3,000 or so business and political leaders is our very own Kate Moody, who is there for us this week. Kate, over to you.
Hi, Stuart. Well, Theresa May herself won't be addressing the World Economic Forum until Thursday, but her vision for Brexit is very much on the agenda here in Davos. A UK operating outside the European single market would change the dynamic for the financial industry, as well as for trade, employment and investment. Now, to talk a bit more about this, I'm joined by Andy Baldwin. You're a managing partner with the professional service group EY, based in London, but responsible for Europe, the Middle East, India and Africa. That's right. Thanks so much for speaking to us on France 24. Now, we are increasingly seeing the prospect of a hard Brexit, of a UK leaving the European single market. What does that leave for the United Kingdom? What kind of a vision do you have for it?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, with the confirmation, hopefully it will come from the Prime Minister's speech today, that the UK will be leaving the single market. I think for many businesses it will give some greater level of certainty, because the UK's negotiating position has been unknown until this point. So I think with that clarity, I think businesses then will start to be able to plan for what life will be outside the single market. Clearly, the impact will be very different sector by sector. We need to take a more of a sector view of what the impact will be on both sectors, companies, but also in the overall UK economy of being outside the single market.
Now, escaping EU regulation and the oversight from Brussels was one of the key factors in the Brexit referendum. Can that really be done?
Well, I think if you look at the regulatory environment, so if you take financial services, for instance, if financial services operating outside of the single market, it will no longer have passporting. Therefore, it will go for what we call equivalence, which will mean it'll have to be equivalent to or aligned to the financial services regulatory framework of the European Union. So many FS companies are assuming that outside of single market, no longer having passporting, the equivalence will be the most likely route that will be taken to ensure access to the single market. So I don't see there being an escape from or dramatic reduction on financial services regulation covering the UK market.
Now, there has been a lot of speculation that if all these financial firms do wind up leaving London, what city will take over as Europe's financial hub? We've talked about Paris, Dublin, Frankfurt. Do you think any of those seem likely candidates, or might London really hold on to its status?
Well, I think you need to look at London's role from a financial centre. It's not just a single market. It's around the ecosystem that's been built there. It's around the rule of law in the UK. It's around trade. Those factors will not change when the UK leaves the single market. What we have done, we've been tracking 240 companies in terms of what they've been saying about the single market and whether they will leave the UK. 40% have said they're actively looking at what their location strategy will be within financial services. But at the moment, less than 10% have said they actually plan to relocate and move some tasks or activities. In terms of who will benefit, in reality, I think, depending on which aspect of the industry we're looking at, I think New York will probably be a major beneficiary around some of the trading activity. The sense that this will be a sort of a loss for London and a benefit, say, Paris or Frankfurt or Amsterdam, I think it's a much more complex and a more nuanced, likely evolution of the industry going forward.
And contrary to what some predictions had been, we've actually seen quite a lot of big firms, Google, Facebook, Snapchat, increasing their presence in London. Why is that? Is it just about business regulation?
Well, I think you've got a couple of things here. You know, all those companies you mentioned are technology companies, and London's sort of position around from a technology sector, particularly in the fintech space in London, which one of the leading financial technology centres, has been a major attraction for a number of those companies you just mentioned. I think this also goes to the heart for Europe. Europe needs a clearer, stronger technology strategy. The fact that we have no European company who can compete with a Google, an Apple or an Amazon, I think is quite telling from a policy point of view, from a European perspective.
And Europe, of course, also facing quite a lot of uncertainty from the other side of Atlantic as well, with the Trump administration coming in. What's your outlook for the European economy in the months ahead?
Well, I think if you look at the European economy, I think there's two. Brexit, for example, the European Union's biggest trading partner is the UK. So there's a significant trade imbalance with the UK. So effectively, if we see a deterioration of trading activity in the UK, we see a rise in inflation, that will impact European companies. We've seen the German auto companies talking about a slowdown in exports of automotives into the UK, so there'll be a knock-on impact there. I think with the US, it's really around what taxation policy Trump introduces on exports from the European Union to the US, which is probably too early to call at the moment.
Andy Baldwin from EY, thank you so much for speaking to us on France 24. We've just got time for a quick look at the markets. The European markets have just begun their trading day, and we are seeing a negative start there as investors get ready to tune in to Theresa May's speech in just a couple of hours. Earlier on, we saw a mixed close over in Asia, the Nikkei down about 1.5%. Looking on with that uncertainty, we'll be following that speech and the reaction here in Davos throughout the day. Stay tuned.
Kate, thank you very much. Kate Moody there at Davos. We want your coat, by the way, Kate. We've decided it's equally cold here in the studio, but you're lucky enough to have a coat.